welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Janamali, and today I'll be talking about Series 3, Episode 6, The Last Day, with the help of my guest, Feline Ranger, whom I've just been talking to, of course, so hello again.
Hello again, I'm back, and this time I have a drink with me, so this could get interesting.
Well, this is that's actually very appropriate for this particular episode, since we are party in it.
Yeah, you can't see the party hat, but it's on.
It makes me think of Hattie getting into spiritualism, wearing a tiara and everything. But we'll get to that a bit later. For the moment, let's begin at the beginning and the very very cute opening scene with Brighton bringing Lister breakfast and interestingly, Lister saying, I hate all this master servant stuff.
You liar.
Which, of course, for people who have certain taste in fiction, tends to make you think of things that they didn't necessarily mean here, but never mind.
This was the first full episode of Red Dwarf I ever saw, and it is one of my absolute favourites. I think it's so funny, just from beginning to end. There's so many good moments, so many good lines. And it's got such a nice feel to it. It's such a happy episode.
And all the characters are very likeable in it, which you can't say about that many episodes, because I mean, in a lot of them, Rimmer is being Rimmer, but as I believe we've said before, Rimmer in Series 3 is the nicest. I mean, not the whole time, obviously, but for a lot of Series 3, he's probably the nicest and most laid back that we ever see him.
Yeah. And considering the contrast with the last episode, Time Slides, where everyone was kind of out for themselves, really, this is a real shift. This is them kind of working together at their best, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. It's very heartwarming. I mean, of course, this is the episode where we first hear the phrase "the Red Dwarf posse." So it's a where it really establishes them as a. I mean, obviously it's been happening in previous episodes, but this is where it becomes more where it's named at least. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is where it becomes vocalized, isn't it? That we're a gang, we're a family.
Exactly, yes, and it's very heartwarming. I must say though, Crichton, it has always seemed to me takes just a little bit too much glee in billing the delicious breakfast, and making it very clear exactly how delicious it is, and what Liz is missing. It's just a little bit too much glee there.
Yeah, you kind of wonder if he knows, don't you, that what's going to happen, because he knows Lister fairly well by this point. So when he trundles out,
actually, yeah. I mean, of course. Personally, I would not, because I mean, I'm like, no. Once something's in the bin, I do not get it out and I do not eat it. But I mean, I can't blame Lister in some ways, but I wouldn't personally. I go yuck, no.
It does, on the surface of it, appear to be a very clean bin. Like the only thing else that seems to be in there is a sock.
Yeah, I mean, as bins go, it's not that bad. I mean, presumably it hasn't got anything, that is actually dangerous in there to be actually consumed. I mean, at least, I would hope that Lister knows that. But I guess we'll never know. but anyway, yes. I mean, of course, it's interesting. I mean, yes, he says that he hates all master servant stuff, but to a certain extent, he does enjoy it,
Yeah, he likes the perks of it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in later episodes throughout the series, I mean, I think Lister comes to realise, that Crichton does actually enjoy, serving him. I mean, it brings him genuine pleasure, and he's in a constant struggle with that and his principles that no, I'm my own man, you're your own man, and I mean, he sort of goes back and forth between thinking, well, if it makes Crichton happy, does it really hurt, and thinking, no, this isn't right.
And with Lister, it's like a constant battle with his own laziness, isn't it? That Crichton makes it so easy for him. And I think is it at the beginning of Siliconia, was the thing of, Lister sending Crichton a message just while he's sprawled on the sofa and Crichton's right behind him.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, clearly that was one of those days where where Lister was seriously backsliding.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of established within the canon of the show that the times when Lister seems to rely more heavily on Crichton do seem to be when he's suffering from some kind of depression. There's, after he loses his arm in series 7 and things like that. And
True,
yeah,
I mean, obviously, in Ticket to Ride, he's very Lister gets very depressed about the loss of the curry supplies, and Crichton is trying really hard to cheer up and so on. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess it's a very sort of very human tendency, when you're depressed, to sort of backslide and want something which brings you comfort, and obviously Crichton loves bringing comfort to Lister, so it's
it is very much, and it's the comfort blanket and the attention and all of that.
I mean, it's a very sweet, and I mean, I do love the Lister and Crichton relationship, and I mean that obviously, I mean that in a completely platonic way. It's just cute.
But it's interesting the contrast between, this series and series 4, where the sort of Lister Crichton romance kind of becomes a thing, and
yeah, I mean, of course,
and then the contrast between series 12, I think it is, with Siliconia, where Lister actually says to Crichton, actually, you're not my friend, you're my mum.
Oh yeah. It's true. Actually, I mean, it sort of changes over the course of the show. Yeah.
I know you talked to Desolated Quill quite a lot about Crichton and Lister's friendship, and I think it is really important in the show, because actually, when you kind of look at what there is, they have really the most mutually supportive relationship out of the whole crew.
True.
He's always fighting with Rimmer. Cat, will pitch in, but mainly cares about himself. Whereas Lister and Crichton really do have this very mutually supportive and loving relationship.
And it's really sort of heartwarming and cute. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's kind of the real forefront of this episode, isn't it? And what that's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely get onto the fact that obviously, I mean, it's Lister who is the driving force in organising Crichton's party. But before we get to that, I did just want to point out the it's a nice touch that they have Jim Reaper being played by Robert out of the mask.
Yes, yeah, and of course Robert's always said that he hates looking at himself on screen without the mask on, which is unfortunate for him, because it's actually a really good little cameo.
It is, yeah. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with Robert when we see him without the mask. I mean, for instance, as Bongo in Dimension Jump, and in DNA. I mean, yes, he does have what you call a sort of unusual face, but it's a very good comedy face.
They could have got him to put the helmet on and be Hudson in the little advert, couldn't they? That would have been funny.
They could have, yes. Poor Robert. I mean, I bet he's like, why couldn't you have, just given me something like Hudson to start with, and then I wouldn't have had to suffer under the rubber mask all these years.
Yeah. But the name as well, Jim Reaper, just sneaking that little pun in there.
Yeah, obviously, it's a pun on Grim Reaper. Yeah, it's very yeah, and of course, this is a very interesting commentary on deliberate built-in obsolescence. So that they can sell new models. Which was a lot less common then than it is now. So they were quite prescient.
I mean, obviously now anything every phone you buy, you have to upgrade sooner or later, because it won't carry the latest operating system and all of that. I mean, it's everywhere now, isn't it?
I mean, to be fair, it has been 3 million years. Crichton has lasted a heck of a long time.
He has. He's done well, bless him.
It's not like, having to replace your laptop every 2 or 3 years or whatever the heck.
If you think about how old Crichton is, Lister must really do a good job, keep taking care of him and servicing him.
Yeah, which is why it's good that they established an alternate version of him is an engineer, so spanners. So at least there is some kind of canonical basis for Lister being good at that kind of thing.
Though interestingly, in the conversation with Rimmer, when he says about trying to find the shut-off disc, Rimmer kind of says, "Well, we wouldn't know where to begin," and he says, "Oh, you're right." And I'm like, "Didn't you rebuild that guy like three or four episodes ago?"
Exactly, that is a good point, and even better point is the fact actually later on in the episode he does manage to do it. Okay, she walks into a wall, but he did mostly do it.
Yeah, I think she was just a shoddy product. I don't think we can blame that on Lister.
Exactly, yes. I do have to laugh though how
wiring.
sorry, I do have to laugh at how she walks into the wall and it just breaks. It's obviously cardboard. It's supposed to be in the officers' club. I suppose you could say maybe it's the JMC being cheap. Who knows?
I did put in my notes that the Officers Club looks like something out of Scarface. It's just that
Oh, right.
real kind of 80s fake marble, like just so 80s.
Yeah, very 80s. I haven't seen that film, but I think I have seen sort of bits of it, and it did have a very distinctly 80s, very colourful aesthetic. Yeah.
Mm. But one thing I would like to say about that opening scene, just before we move on, is first of all, that whole thing of the waffles in the hat just made like 11-year-old me just laugh till I was almost sick. It's just so stupid, but just such a brilliant little Lister moment of like, oh, what am I going to do? Just put it on my head.
Yeah. And he after Crichton left, he finished eating it.
Yeah, just picking bits out of his hair. Bless him.
Yeah, it's just so very very Lister.
Also, I'm very angry that we never saw the leather shorts again. I don't think.
I think actually he does wear them in other episodes of series 3, but they're not really sort of focused on. I'm sure that
No, I like those. I think we should have kept those.
yeah, they were very nice. Of course you've got an icon with him wearing them, so yeah.
Not that I have a problem or anything.
But they really are very cute.
Why would you out me like that?
Yeah, this is an extremely cute episode all around. Everybody is cute in it.
Yeah, very, very cute.
Okay, so the whole concept of Silicon Heaven. Obviously, it's a very obvious commentary on religion and people using religion, to keep subjugated people or species in this case, happy to serve because they think there's a big reward at the end of it. Obviously, it's a very very cynical, but it's also very very Grant Naylor.
Yeah, it's linking back to that stuff in series 1, isn't it, about the cats and the cat religion? And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I think Rob and Doug obviously just have issues with organised religion.
I don't blame them because
of all
I
types.
I don't have issues with individual religious people. That's fine. Do what you like, but organised religion, I'm very wary of.
Yeah, no, I think criticism of any kind of institution, religious or otherwise, is always good to have. I don't think it's something you should necessarily shy away from if you have an opinion about certain aspects of it. But yeah, it's a very Red Dwarf thing, and it is something that they have sort of gone back to a few times.
Exactly, yeah, and of course, there's a little bit of a debate between Lister and Rimmer, and Lister says, "But his beliefs are a load of baloney," and Rimmer's like, "Everyone's entitled to their beliefs," which I always thought, is for Rimmer is oddly tolerant. But I guess somebody has to argue with him, and Kat wouldn't care, so yeah.
He's still feeling the effects of that church service in the last episode.
I guess so, yeah, I mean, and also he's in the stage of the show, Rimmer that is, where he's still mostly nostalgic and respectful towards his parents. He hasn't sort of shaken them off. I mean, he never entirely shakes them off. I mean, he goes back and forth throughout the series, but in series three, he's mostly sort of oh, my parents weren't that bad really. So he really does go back and forth a lot on them.
But again, just as I think the whole of this episode just has some absolutely brilliant lines in it. And there's some really good ones in this, little scene with Rimmer and Lister. And the whole thing about the Seventh Day Advent Hoppists is brilliant, and the Faith Hop and Charity. And
Yeah,
again, is
that is so sort of classic Grant Naylor Hoover, Faith Hop and Charity, it's all based on a misprint, that is extremely classic sort of Grant Naylor Hoover.
yeah. And then you've got the whole bit as well about Rimmer's stint in the Samaritans, which is like absolutely sick, but at the same time hilarious. And
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, I can imagine suicidal people committing suicide after talking to Rimmer, because
oh, absolutely, yeah. And the sad thing is, he would have really tried as well, but just consistently said the wrong thing.
it's interesting. I mean, I'm not actually sure if I've seen the episode in question, but apparently the writers of the British Empire, lifted this bit wholesale for Gordon Brutus.
And there's also, again, probably one of the stupidest lines in Red Dwarf history, but again, just my child self found it the funniest thing ever, which is the whole "mind that bus, what bus splat" conversation.
Yeah. That is very, sort of kids type humour. Yes, it is funny though. It does make me laugh.
It's so dark, but just, yeah, I just find it really funny.
It is funny. Mm. Okay, so I guess yeah. I mean, I did want to make the point about Lister organising Crichton's party because, of course, we did discuss in thanks for the memory. It's implied, that he was the one who sort of organised the Rimmer's Death Day party, but we don't actually have that confirmed. But here on screen, the last day, it is very definitely confirmed that Lister is the driving force and the organiser behind Crichton's party.
Which is, again, a Death Day party, really.
It's really, yeah. Hey, I hadn't thought of it in that light, but you are absolutely correct. Yes.
It's history repeating itself.
Yeah.
I wonder if Cat knows when his birthday is.
That's a good point, actually. I mean, you'd think, given what Cat is like, that he would have demanded a birthday party at some stage. Maybe he did, and it was just off screen.
I reckon he probably demands one like every 8 weeks or so.
Actually, that is possible. Yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be a novelty to Cat, so that's why we've never seen an equivalent for him, perhaps.
Mm. But yeah, I did put in my notes that there is that link there with thanks for the memory.
Yeah.
And again, it's that idea of a Death Day party, and I suppose it's obviously that slightly different thing, but yeah, definitely that link there. And again, there does seem to be that idea that Lister is the driving force behind it.
And I mean, it is. I know the character progression in this show, is sort of, you would say, fitful, and people backside and stuff. But this is a very obvious, example of the crew sort of moving forward and becoming more of a sort of found family. Because as you pointed out, Cat made the suits. Rimmer did the invitations. I mean, everybody chipped in and did something.
And they all went and found out the presents as well. That's really sweet.
That is so sweet. Yeah, it did occur to me actually, where Holly said that she's knocked up a special mechanoid menu for Crichton. I don't mean this in a bad way, but I mean I find it hard to imagine Norman's Holly actually designing a Mechanoid menu for Crichton. So I'm wondering whether that was specifically written for Hattie.
Yeah, you kind of feel like maybe Norman's Holly would have been like, I don't have time for this, and maybe would have like dropped in and made a few snarky comments. But
I mean, he does participate in the Death Day party, but I mean, in a very sort of passive kind of, I'm here doing a bit of headbanging to the music, But I mean, that's kind of different for being actively involved in present giving, menu design, that kind of thing.
yeah, definitely. And I do like how they included Holly in this whole section as well, because it would have been so easy to have just, for Hattie to have been an afterthought. But actually, they really did amalgamate Holly into that party with the menu and the presents and the tiara, which I thought was really nice.
It's lovely. I mean, I do think part of that may be Hattie, sort of pushing for that. I did watch the documentary, and she said originally Holly didn't get him a present, and she was like, "Oh, come on, Holly will get him a present." So I mean, obviously she was, sort of, come on, pushing them a bit, which good for her. I mean, I'm glad she did, because it improves the episode a lot.
Yes, definitely. Good for Hattie. I'm glad that she stood up for Holly.
Yeah, and I love her drunk acting and her tiara sliding down her hair and everything. It's hilarious.
Yeah, no, she does a great job with just a head.
Really, 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 really does. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it sound as though I don't like Norman's version of the character. I do like Norman's version of the character, but I kind of have a preference for Hattie because how do I put this? You kind of get the impression that she cares more about the crew. I mean, which is just the difference in Hattie's performance, I think.
Yeah, and I think as well, just the delivery, that the sarcasm she's so good at, and like in Backwards when she has the line about, well, this year's calendar would be handy, and
Yeah, exactly.
basically the whole of White Hole, which I know isn't a super popular episode, but she absolutely slayed it in that.
Oh, I love Hattie in Whitehall. I mean, I love that she gets to be directly rude and snarky to women. It's just funny.
Yeah. So yes, all the big ups to Hattie.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, well, we respect Hattie in this house.
We stan.
We do. Okay, so yeah, going back to everyone else's presence. I mean, I love the way Kat is all sort of like a kid. Give him mine, give him mine.
Yeah, the whole way through. But I wonder how many parties Kat's actually been to.
Oh, River's Death Day party. Apart from that, I don't know. I mean, a total of one. I mean, I don't know.
He's so excited by the whole thing, isn't he?
I mean, unless this has held other parties off screen, which I guess he might have done, but I mean, there can't have been that many, or Cat wouldn't be this excited.
He went and made suits for everybody as well within like an afternoon, which is, he obviously was invested.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really a nice. I mean, it's nice of Cat, and it's a nice way to utilise, his already pre-existing interests as well, So I mean, that was a really good idea.
And they do have that little scene, where they're talking over the Marilyn Monroe droid, and Lister says about Crichton being like Action Man, and Cat's like, "What? He's got no," and you kind of think, where does he think he's keeping it?
I don't know. Maybe he fixed it with trucks.
Yeah, he sees Crichton every day. Surely, you would have noticed. But
the only possible assumption is he thinks, it's tucked away somewhere and it retracts. I mean,
like a CD drive.
The Hoover Cat version, this is it's hidden in some kind of compartment or something. I mean, I don't know.
Just press the button and it slides out.
I guess we should probably move on. Yeah, I mean, I do also like. I mean, okay. I mean, it makes me go about the sinal fluid, but I mean, it's the thought that counts for me, I guess.
It is kind of like, it's a gross present, but obviously it is something that Rimmer actually does cherish, because he must have forked out a significant amount for it.
Exactly, yeah. So it really is a classic case of it's a fault that counts.
Yeah,
Also, I
definitely.
love Lister getting a little box that goes foot. Of course, his mate.
Yeah, I did wonder if he made that out of like the extra bits of the Marilyn Monroe droid.
He may have done. Of course, I guess you could argue his main present is the Marilyn Monroe droid.
Yes, and of course, Cat's earring as well deserves special mention. It's the one you really hate.
Oh yes, it's such a classic thing. Of course, Cat will give Crichton something that he has gone off, but I mean, and he gave him anything is still impressive, really.
Yeah, it's kind of flashbacks, isn't it, to series one where he turns up in the quarters with presents for Lister, which is grapes that he's already eaten.
Yeah, I guess at least Well, obviously you can't eat an earring, so probably if it was something edible, he would have eaten it.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose they felt they'd already used that gag, but
And so
yeah.
they couldn't really use it again. Mhm.
But yeah, the whole party scene as it descends is just such great character for all of them. Just
Oh yeah, yeah,
every kind of line.
I love it. I love when you suddenly get this cut to oh they're suddenly all really drunk. And
Yeah, and
so yeah, I guess we should probably I don't particularly want to, but I guess we should probably discuss the Uncle Frank story.
yeah, I guess you can kind of let it go because it was an accident, and
Yeah,
a very kind of unpleasant and slightly traumatizing accident, but an accident nonetheless. So let's cling to that.
Yeah. Of course, obviously, it was an accident, but he mistook him for his sister-in-law instead. But which isn't really that much better, but still.
And of course, a lot of people have speculated on the fact that actually, Rimmer's older brother is Frank, and whether there's some significance to that.
Of course, yeah. A lot of people have said, Rimmer's brothers were actually fathered by Uncle Frank, and that explains the difference. But yes, it's absolutely possible, given that we know that Rimmer's mum was sleeping with Uncle Frank and various other people. But I kind of have an issue with the idea, that they would automatically be superior because they had a different father. Come on.
Yeah, and there is as well that thing, isn't there, of maybe that Rimmer's dad knew about Dungo, which is why he treated Rimmer differently, but maybe didn't know about the others.
That would make sense. Yes, let's face it. Given what I'm, I'm not someone who likes to slut shame, but it is basically canon that Rimmer's mother slept with a lot of people. So there are various options for the fathers of all the boys, really.
And of course, Rimmer has that line here about, everyone's going, oh, I didn't have a mother. And he's like, well, you can all have mine because everybody else did. And of course,
Yeah.
there's still maybe a bit of bitterness hanging on there from the whole polymorph episode.
There clearly very much is. Oh yeah, the polymorph thing uh, where Lister minus his fear may or may not have slept with a polymorph impersonating Rimmer's mum. I really hope not.
Well, it's kind of implied, isn't it? But we don't know whether it was just, the polymorph trying to make him angry. But
I really prefer to think that it was just a polymorph, getting Rimmer as angry as possible so it could feast on his anger. But it's kind of left ambiguous.
well, Lister seems, he kind of says, what about it, doesn't he? So he kind of does imply that it happened, but
Yeah,
again, he could just be spoiling for a fight.
yeah. Of course, Lister, has got no fear, so he's like, picking a fight with anyone and everyone, So he may be lying. Or he may not be lying. It's kind of hard to say.
And of course, continuing the theme of mummy issues, we get the foundations here of the whole Ouroboros mess.
Of course, yes. Where we find out Lister's, of a sort of traumatic backstory. We already knew that Rimmer had a traumatic backstory, but it turns out Lister's got one too.
Turns out he didn't just have Rimmer's mum; he also had his own.
Oh God! Oh dear! Oh dear! Oh dear! Yes.
Well, that's not revealed just yet. But
there is no denying. There is a definite incest preoccupation in Red Dwarf, I'm afraid.
always good for a laugh, isn't it? A bit of
Yeah,
incest.
it's good for a laugh, like I said, I don't think Rob and Doug took it particularly seriously, because I think they're
No, not at all.
operating, where it's not like we actually, portrayed people who are actually in an incestuous relationship. We were just joking about, So I think that's the attitude that they probably would have.
Of course, it's ironic that Lister gets so upset in this scene with everyone teasing him about the webbed toes and stuff, and they're going, they weren't related, and it's like, kind of were.
Yeah, poor little thing though. Okay, he's wrong, although he doesn't know that at this time, But I do kind of feel for him. He did bear his innermost, and they all took the piss, But poor little thing.
Yeah. But I love that story he tells as well about the trip to France and the vomiting off the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. And the sort of dig at what Jackson Pollock paintings look like.
But again, it's just that whole thing, isn't it, of like teenage Brits on holiday. And
Yeah,
he's there in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and what did you do? He got drunk and threw up.
I visited Paris as a teenager, but I was good. I didn't get drunk. Because our teacher was there, so we couldn't.
The vomit only reached 1 mile, not 5.
Okay,
I did actually. When I guess I must have been like 16 or 17. I went on a A-level trip to Spain and did get very. Yeah, I'm not one to point fingers at Lister here.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, if you're a teenager and abroad, and you have the opportunity, you're going to go wild. That's just teenagers tend to do.
I don't think
Especially British teenagers, I have to agree.
I don't think he specifies in the story how old he was, does he?
And then he just says it was a school trip. So I assume probably somewhere between 16 and 18, but who knows?
Given Lister's track record of what he was doing at 12, maybe we shouldn't assume.
Yeah, now you mention it, he could have been younger, yes. Let's face it. There was no way Lister waited until he was 18 to have an alcoholic drink.
No, definitely not. Right, at any moment, you might hear some raucous squeaking, which isn't me; it is my dog.
Oh right, okay, yes.
I'm sort of trying to get the dog toy away from her, but I think I'm just encouraging her, so I'm just going to ignore it.
All right. Okay. I am keeping an eye on the time, so moving on to the hangover scene, which was also very enjoyable. I love the sort of chilled out classical music and Crichton going, "Is it me or is that cockroach shuffling too loudly?"
All of them kind of waking up groaning is as anyone who's ever been in that situation knows the pain, don't they? And Crichton reading through his report of embarrassment factor 91%. He called the previous evening 2%.
Most of us have been there. I've certainly been there, yes.
I do. This particularly makes me laugh because I have a very strong memory of actually watching this episode on DVD while I was at uni with my housemates. And there's that scene where, Lister throws back the covers and says, we're on a mining ship 3 million years into deep space. Where did I get this traffic cone? And all of us bursting out laughing because at that very moment we did in fact have a traffic cone sat in our student sitting room.
Oh gosh, that is a classic. Where Rob and Doug were dead on.
Yeah, definitely. All kinds of. They actually had a crackdown. The council had a crackdown when I was at uni because so many road signs and cones and stuff were getting nicked. So it is a long-lived tradition.
Definitely, yeah. Well, Personally, I never did that particular tradition, but I mean, I did go to uni. I did have some episodes of being very drunk and waking up with a terrible hangover. So yes, I've been there.
And we have to ask, who did the policewoman's helmet and suspenders belong to?
I mean, where the hell did they appear from? Assume that they must have gone, in between leaving the officers' club and getting back to the bunk room. They must have gone some kind of drunken ramble, and I don't know, maybe they got them from somebody's bunk room or something.
Yeah, or maybe went and raided one of like the old clubs or something down on one of the seedier decks.
Yes, or maybe they went to shopping mall, and just grabbed anything they saw.
I want to know what happened after they left the party. I want that flashback episode.
Yeah, it's such a shame it would be impossible to do unless age altering technology. Which I mean, I know it's possible now, but unfortunately, Red Dwarf doesn't have Marvel Films' budget.
No, disappointing, isn't it? But also there is, again, that sort of classic line which has been oft-quoted about, don't give me that Star Trek crap, it's too early in the morning.
Yeah, that is so. I mean, that is so very Red Dwarf. I mean, yes, this is a lovely found family episode, but they're not going to get too sentimental about it.
Yeah, got to undercut that sentimentality.
Yeah, it's not like it's sort of well, I mean, okay, it is a dig at Star Trek, but it's an affectionate dig at Star Trek.
Yeah, and of course it's interesting that it's Cat who first moots that there's one of him and four of us.
And it's Cat who
who's usually the most selfish of the group is the one who first stands up and goes no.
Red Dwarf Posse. That is really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
There you go. Maybe Cat is he has a softer side than he lets on.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think so. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe he watched a western with had some kind of posse in it, and that's where he got the idea.
Yeah, been watching too many films with Lister.
Yeah, that actually that seems a fairly plausible explanation to me. Okay, so time's moving on. So moving on to Hudson 10. Kudos to Gordon Kennedy. It's a good performance.
Oh, he's brilliant, isn't he? He really sells it. And it must have been really hard because obviously you've got that thing there if they were obviously going for like the Terminator reference. But he did it without doing the voice, without doing the sort of cheesy Arnold Schwarzenegger accent, which I think was really good.
Yeah, he does actually say in the documentary actually that the voice he did assume, the sort of low, scary voice, it gave me a terrible sore throat, but I mean it was worth it. It works.
Yeah, definitely. And there's the Blade Runner reference in there as well, isn't there, at the end? Which obviously they came back to in Back to Earth many years later.
Yeah, now you mention it, which is interesting because I mean, a lot of people think sort of the whole Blade Runner thing sort of came out of nowhere, but I mean, I hadn't noticed that before. Yeah. So
I think Rob and Doug have said it's like one of their favourite movies, and I think along with Alien, it was the aesthetic at least was something that they kind of wanted to echo in the show.
I mean, of course, obviously, the alien influence becomes very obvious in the series with these sort of white bunk rooms and so on. Yeah.
And the polymorph.
Obviously, yes. Yep, the polymorph. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I know Hudson 10. His sanity chip is worn out from all the time he spent back in Crichton, but it is still somewhat implausible that that they would design a mechanoid like that is supposed to be sort of part of a crew, and serve human beings and stuff.
Yeah, listen, if you're building a robot that requires a sanity chip, you've already kind of lost, haven't you?
Exactly, yeah, and people don't generally tend to like a robot that is a good foot taller than most human beings.
I think a lot of the crew would have probably been quite intimidated by Hudson.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even
for many
the
reasons.
title chip was fully functioning. So
And of course,
yeah.
Rimmer isn't intimidated by him until he realizes that he is actually, well, he was never actually in danger, was he? Because he's still soft light at this point. But
I mean, it's true. I mean, there is, of course, this massive sort of gaping plot hole of the fact, he can't, nobody can actually touch and damage and hurt Rimmer. So why is he so scared? And the answer basically is obviously because he's a coward.
But no, that whole scene where he kind of marches up to him, kind of chest height, and starts giving him this, his idea of smack talk
Yeah,
is just
you have to love
a
the
classic
fact that
Rimmer
he,
scene.
sort of comments on his macho chest and silly oiled nipples. I mean, yeah, I think
I mean, they're staring him right in the face.
your classic game is showing there, remember?
And yeah, Lister's response to that is, "What's he going to do? Drop his trousers?"
So yeah, I mean, I did want to make the point that this is sort of this is the first real example of all four of the boys sort of teaming up against a major threat without being influenced in some way. I did look back, and obviously they are pub fighting backwards, but that doesn't really count because it's against human beings, and in Polymorph. Lister doesn't join in the fight against Polymorph because he doesn't. At first, he doesn't join in because he's had his fear sucked out, and then later on, when he does join in, he's not really himself. So this is first example of them all being in their same minds and actively choosing to team up against a pretty major threat.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, it's that first vocalization we get of them being the Red Dwarf posse, and just the whole thing from beginning to end is really quite touching. With just everybody, trying to pitch in to sort of, make Crichton's final day the best it can be, and then all pitching together to try and save him. And yeah, it's one of those few episodes that they kind of weren't afraid to be, a little bit sentimental.
Yeah, I mean, I really do like that. So they have to sort of undercut it in classic Red Dwarf fashion. I do like that that they were prepared to sort of go there and embrace the found family aspect because it's just I mean the overwhelming emotion I get when I think about this episode is just it's so cute.
Yeah, but I think as well, as I say, it's the first episode I ever watched, and it's a really good, condensed story. It all takes place, within that sort of 30 minutes. And within that 30 minutes, everything there is to know about that universe and those characters. And that's really, really hard to do in 30 minutes.
Now you mentioned it, I guess if you were introducing someone to the show, this wouldn't be a bad episode to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much characterization in it, and it's so self-contained, and yeah, it just kind of tells you everything, and it's so funny the whole way through. It's genuinely, I think, one of my favourite episodes.
Yeah, it's a really lovely. So, I mean, if they'd hadn't got renewed, and this had been the end of the show, it would have been a lovely way to end it.
Yeah, I'm very glad they didn't. But yes.
Me too, definitely. I mean, you can definitely see, they that was probably part of their thinking. Well, if we don't get renewed, let's wrap it up nicely, and it does wrap it up nicely. But I am very very glad that we got so many more series, of course.
Yeah, and of course, this leads then into series 4, which again, I think in terms of aesthetic, it's very similar to series 3, isn't it? But yeah, I think this kind of portion of Red Dwarf, and I know everybody listening is going to have their own take on this and their own opinion, but for me, that series sort of group of between 3 and 6 is probably Red Dwarf at its peak, and I know a lot of people love the early series, but yeah, for me, I think this kind of batch starting here is where the show really became what it was supposed to be and what it wanted to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. Having just recently rewatched series 1 and 2 for the podcast. I mean, I do love them. They have a very special and unique charm. But I do think, when I was originally first watching, the series I sort of latched onto were more sort of series 3, 4, very much 5, and possibly 6 to some extent, to a lesser extent because it didn't have Hattie in it, But those sort of series 3 to 6 are definitely my sort of go-to series, when I think of classic Red Dwarf.
Yeah, I think series 1 and 2 are great and have some really brilliant stuff, but at that point they were still discovering who the characters were. Whereas, as I say, with this episode, this is one of those episodes you can watch and it tells you everything about everybody.
Yeah, and of course, series 3 onwards, introduces Crichton as a regular, and my personally preferred version of Holly. So that probably partly explains my bias, but also, as you say, the characters are more sort of established. I mean, could argue, especially Lister, because from series 3 onwards, Lister sort of toughens up and sort of starts acting as a leader a lot more.
And starts wearing leather.
Yeah.
As it should be.
Exactly, yeah. It's amazing though how, when I was watching backwards recently for the podcast, it's amazing how it instantly makes him seem tougher, and more plausible that he would get into a pub fight in backwards.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think, as I say, I do like a lot of the costumes he had in series 2 with, like the different T-shirts and stuff. But for me, the leather is just absolutely representative of Lister's personality.
I would basically say the same thing. I mean, it's not that I don't. I mean, I love the early sort of colourful T-shirts and Hawaiian shirts and so on, but I do have sort of slight preference for the leather because it just feels more Lister, And
I'm glad because they had the whole thing through sort of the later series of the engineering overalls. But I did like that in the Dave era they went back to the leather.
I have noted.
I don't think Craig was so happy. I don't think it was as comfortable.
Yeah, I have noticed, that although in the Dave they've gone back to the leather, they have sort of given him a few sort of t-shirts underneath it, that feel like a sort of realistic successor to the ones that he wore in the very early series. They're slightly more mature, to reflect his more mature years. But it's still basically the same thing.
Of course, there's the red long johns as well, which I think were kind of the compromise. It's like, okay, you can wear the leather jacket, but you can wear the long johns underneath.
Oh yes, the red long johns, which of course were successor to the white long johns, which
which we shall talk about in depth another time.
Yes,
and again, like the leather shorts, we only saw those white long johns the once, but it was enough.
Yeah, I am very, 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 very seriously tempted to have you on when I do the Duck Soup podcast and encourage you as much as possible.
Yes, I'll have a drink for that one as well. You'll get my honest opinion.
Right, okay. I'm
developing a reputation as the fandom's vodka aunt.
Yes. Yep. Right, okay, so one more thing, which of course is the scores out of 10, both overall and for slashiness.
So I've got to give this one a 10, because I have a real emotional attachment to it. Slashiness, there's not a whole lot in there. It's an ensemble piece, really. It's not so much about Rimmer and Lister as it is about Lister and Crichton.
Yeah.
So I'll give it a 5 for slashiness, just because it's them getting on well, which we don't see enough.
It's sweet. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm more or less along the same lines as you, but I'm going to give it 6 out of 10 for slashiness, and that is because of Rimmer's forbidden passion fruit line.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, Freudian slip there, Rimsey.
Yep, definitely. Yes. And overall, I'm going to give it 8.5. I mean, I don't like it quite as much as you do, but I mean, I do like it a heck of a lot. So it is a very lovely episode. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologamet for technical help, and also thank you very much to my guest Feline Ranger, and I hope you carry on enjoying your drinks.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on either Tumblr or on Discord, the posts where I will be linking to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. And the next episode we'll be covering is one of the few textually, as opposed to subtextually, romantic Red Dwarf episodes, Camille. I hope you'll join us then, but for now, goodbye.